everybody. Welcome to the Buckeye Weekly podcast. I am Tony Gerdeman, here as always with Tom Orr, and also, as you can see, with Kevin Noon. Tom, how's it going?
I was so sure the way you started that sentence, I was so sure you were going to say also disappointingly with Kevin Noon, but you didn't, and that was good. That was very friendly, very nice. We're all trapped here together. We're all snowed in today, so great time to talk about all the exciting news. I did the morning show for Friday, so I dropped that on Thursday afternoon as I do. And it was like, well, I'm going to do this morning show because there's going to be a bunch of news coming, but I can't bank on this happening Thursday night. So then as soon as I dropped it, a couple hours later, boom, Ohio State has a new offensive coordinator.
Okay. That's how it goes. You willed it into existence. Kevin, how are you?
I'm in the transfer portal with Noah Rogers right now. We're both going to NC State. Just going to address the close. My niece goes to NC State, and it was a Christmas present, so I have to wear it. And I'm really out of laundry, and it's quite cold outside, if you don't know. So cold and irritable. That's how I am.
So we got Noah Rogers, Kevin Noon, Richard Washington, Derek Morris, some former Ohio State to NC State people. Well, Kevin, it was good knowing you, I guess. Congrats.
Don't act like you didn't process him out. We know. Were you close to 85? No.
Anyway, welcome everybody. We will get to all of your super chats and your chats and your regular things and questions. There's obviously a lot to talk about. The elephant in the room, the former elephant offensive coordinator in the room, Bill O'Brien, if you will, coming to Ohio State. And if you guys if anybody in the chat wants to let us know why you don't like this hire, specifically why you don't, I would love to know, because for me, this is a lot of what we talked about Ryan Day needs to do in terms of, whether it's giving up play calling control, get a more mature, get older on the offensive staff, get some knowledge, get some experience. He's gone and done that, and this is going to allow him to, whether or not he's giving up play calling, it's going to allow more, just a better view from up top, a better, just more information, more contribution, I think, offensively. And so for that reason alone, and we'll get into a bunch of other specifics, Tom, like this feels like a good move to me. This is I think maybe the first time I'm actually sharing my opinion on this. I think it's fine. I don't know if it's going to work, but I think a lot of the boxes we've talked about are checked with Bill O'Brien.
Well, I think people have to understand this is a different thing than when they brought in Jim Knowles. When they brought in Jim Knowles, it was the defense is horrendously broken, and we need to bring in someone who can completely overhaul this whole thing. And, really strip it down to the studs and build from scratch. That's not what they need on offense. The offense is fine. And it's run by someone who is sort of universally regarded as one of the best offensive minds in the game of college football. This is not Bill O'Brien coming in to run the Bill O'Brien offense, and it's going to be all new terminology and an all new playbook. That's not what this is. This is Ryan Day wanted an adult in the room to replace Kevin Wilson because they were kind of missing that last year. So now you're bringing in the Kevin Wilson replacement. It was not ever the Kevin Wilson offense at Ohio State. It was the Ryan Day offense. And Kevin Wilson is there to be a veteran voice in the room and share his experience and some of the things he's seen and done at the various places he's been. That's what this is. This is, I need a grown up in the room to be the veteran voice of reason and sit up in the box and be able to tell me what he's seeing from up there. And, probably we're assuming probably call the plays and handle some of the game day responsibilities as well. If that's what you're looking for, that's what you got.
Kevin.
Yeah, I think that there are a couple things that have been thrown out there. One of them is the ineffectiveness of the Patriots in 23. Well, that was a horrible roster on its 38th quarterback, and none of them were all that good to begin with. and there were just a lot of issues there. So that is not necessarily something that I see as a failure of Bill O'Brien. And then, of course, too, there is Bill O'Brien, the NFL GM, and that's not in play either for what this role is. Yeah, he's going to have to go out and recruit. Yeah, there's mixed stories about what his recruiting prowess is, but he's landed quarterbacks in cycles before, and Ohio State has done a really good job of landing quarterbacks just based on Ryan Day. So not necessarily like you're going to be Bill O'Brien's quarterback. You would be going to Ohio State to be Ryan Day's quarterback. So I don't really understand it either. Adult in the room is something I'm saying there. He's going to be somebody too that can coach coaches. And you have some youngish coaches in their 40s and so on, and you need a good Southie to come in and whip them into shape a little bit. And that's what Bill O'Brien's going to be. I don't see this as a long-term move. I see it as a couple of years. And if he can sit there and impart some things into Brian Hartline, that's, kind of how I see the path working, how I see it on the flow chart.
And we'll talk about Jason Taylor later, like easing into replacing Larry Johnson. That's the theory on if they could get him. I think Bill O'Brien is doing that with Brian Hartline, where I'm going to be here for a couple of years because that's all he ever really stays at any place is a couple of years. And no, he's not been fired by Alabama. No, he's not been fired by New England. I've written a column. I'll go ahead and drop it sometime after this during lunch, and it's basically too much of it is responding to the internet, Tom. So I know you're already gonna why are you wasting your time? It's what I do. Don't worry about it. But I got a response about how why would you hire somebody that keeps getting fired everywhere? And it's like he doesn't get fired everywhere. The Patriots this year. I had somebody in the NFL say, well, they've got top 3 worst offensive talent in the league. So good luck with that. The GM thing, I know a lot of people hate that trade. He was the GM for 9 months before he got fired during the COVID year. So he does so well. They name him GM after the 2019 season. They go 0-4 with everything going on in COVID, and they fire him like 9 months after they give him I think an extension and also the bump as the GM. So who knows how well he would have done there as the GM. It's a lot for any head coach to do that. And he's going to have so many different perspectives that if you think about it, just boiling it down to you're replacing Corey Dennis with a guy who has been coaching for 30 years and about the last 20 of that has been involved with quarterbacks. He's been a head coach in the Big Ten and in the NFL. He's been an offensive coordinator in the SEC and also other, I think, Georgia Tech and some other places. And also he's been a GM. And he's going to be up in the sky, up in the press box where he was at Alabama. So you're replacing Corey Dennis with that. And also putting a better pair of eyes, another pair of eyes. Last year it was Keenan Bailey and some GAs, and now you're up there. You've got another Kevin Wilson type. And Kevin Wilson is an all-time great play caller. I don't think that Bill O'Brien is an all-time great play caller. And I think maybe that's where some of the complaints have been. I honestly haven't followed Alabama enough day to day to know it, although I did do a Twitter search of some of my old tweets on Bill O'Brien. And apparently I was watching some Alabama games because I was not impressed a couple of times. So I threw some barbs in there at times. But, hey, that's what we do. But also his quarterback did win a Heisman Trophy with like a ridiculous year, Bryce Young. And as I tweeted out and I've wrote on the Huddle message board, Tom, and also as I wrote in my column that I said I'll drop, every college quarterback that has played for him has been better with him than without him.
Right. You put out some stats and it was pretty jarring to see how dramatically better the numbers were for quarterbacks when they were playing under him versus not playing under him. I think this is one of these things where there are people who are saying this is the greatest hire ever. There are people who are saying this is the worst hire ever. And as always, this is probably a little bit in between. I think this is, I guess the first thing I'd like to know is give me a specific name that you would have been happy with. Because we had a thread on our board starting last Saturday. I put out a thread on our board with here's the names I'm hearing, and it was Liam Cohen, the offensive coordinator at Kentucky, and Bill O'Brien were the two active names. There's a third name that I had heard that was just probably too expensive. So in the immediate, the instant post, before I heard any, before there was any feedback, I can pull it up real quickly, but it was basically like, listen, I know this is not going to be something that people are super excited about. It was the board moved. Hang on. The other name I'm hearing is former Penn State and Houston Texans head coach and former Alabama offensive coordinator, Bill O'Brien. I'm guessing this one won't be as well received as Cohen among the fan base, but being the OC for an offensive-minded head coach like Day is likely going to be pretty different than being the OC for a defensive-minded head coach like Saban. Meaning, you don't have to. What I said earlier, you're not running your system. You're running you're implementing and assisting and supplementing the system of the guy who just hired you. And as the comment on the screen from Ben Higgins says, if you get hired multiple times by Nick Saban and Bill Belichick to coach football, you're good in my book. I think there is a certain, but not that these guys are infallible, not that they always make 100% perfect hires, but you can see there are always the people who say, oh, if you think Bill O'Brien's a good hire, you don't know ball. Well, does Nick Saban know ball? Does Bill Belichick know ball? I would submit that there is some evidence that they do. So I don't think that that's something you can just sort of like dismiss casually, like, well, he's bad. Like, has he had a perfect, flawless career? Absolutely not. Has anyone? Probably not. It's just, I in that thread on the board, there were a bunch of people, and it was, anytime anyone's name got brought up, it was like, Joe Brady. Well, Joe Brady was only good because he had Joe Burrow. Okay, so who else? Oh, that guy was only good because that guy had a terrible offense 2 years ago. That guy. There is no one who has the number one offense in college football or the number one offense in the NFL every single year, whose quarterbacks throw 70 touchdowns and no interceptions. That person does not exist. And if that person did exist, they would immediately get bumped to be a head coach, and you wouldn't be able to hire them as an offensive coordinator anyway.
Yeah, I'll jump in. A couple other names I'd heard along the way. Jason Candle, which got, a fine round of yawns there from, the Toledo head coach. I heard Joe Moorhead's name mentioned at some points. I think the Jason Candle, I think that went somewhere but didn't go somewhere. I think that was, sometimes we put names out that we're hearing for whatever reason. Sometimes it's agents get names out there. I know that Candle, the tires were kicked there, but here's the thing, to Tony's point. This is not Ryan Day bringing in Kerry Combs to run a single high defense. That Ryan Day is not a defensive coach. I mean, you have to know defense to coach offense, but he's not a defensive coach. A system that Kerry Combs, he ran everything under Dean Pease in Tennessee except really single high, cover one, cover three, and he brings them in, and it's an abject disaster. You're not going to go out and get 10-year ago Lincoln Riley. That's just not going to be the case for a multitude of reasons. That candidate isn't necessarily going to want to be overshadowed by the head coach and have his offensive star tarnished at all. The head coach isn't going to want to bring in somebody who's going to try and make too many changes. So there was no super exciting consensus building candidate out there. So I knew one way, shape, or form that it was going to just, it was going to get at least, no noise. And if it got any noise, it was probably going to be a little bit on the negative side. But I think you couple this with, the vocal minority that's really upset about the hire of Ross Bjork or whatever. And then people are dissatisfied that Caleb Downs is not a Buckeye yet and Caden Proctor's not a Buckeye yet. And we've rechanneled December 29th. F my life.
Free his life. All right. Well,
Bill O'Brien was at for 7 seasons, 6 full seasons in Houston. The Texans now, I believe, have been around for 22 years. This is their 22nd year. This season was the 7th time they won their division. Thank you to C.J. Stroud and a young defense and a young head coach. But 4 of the 6 other times they have won a division, it was Bill O'Brien as the head coach. And in his 6 full seasons, they won a division 4 times. They made the playoffs one year with Brian Hoyer as their starting quarterback. They made it another year with Brock Osweiler as their starting quarterback. They won a spell with Tom Savage as their starting quarterback. And this dude is still winning. He's got a winning record now. A lot of that at the end is because of Deshaun Watson. But this is a desert of quarterbacks that this dude has had to work with at Houston before he landed Deshaun Watson, who then did what he did. But this to be able to win with that, to me, that shows an ability to be malleable and to get whatever you can out of stuff. And people are asking, can Bill O'Brien's offense mesh with Ryan Day's offense? Bill O'Brien has been around so long. He should be able to do whatever Ryan Day is asking and pick it up quickly. If high school quarterbacks that become sophomore quarterbacks can pick up the offense, you would think a 60-year-old man can do the same thing, who's been around the game, knows all the terminology. You would think college coaches could pick it up just as well as college kids. So there is a ton of data and facts that support this hire that is outside of opinion of thinking one way or thinking the other. And I saw somebody mention that, we're working really hard to make this a good hire. I don't know if it's going to work. All I know is that wherever he's been, his quarterbacks have done really well. Somebody asked about his recruiting, and Kevin, we can get into the recruiting in a sec here. But in his 4 years as a college coach, his last 4 years as a college coach, he received commitments from 3 5-star quarterbacks. And I think maybe the greatest recruiting job of all of that was Christian Hackenberg in 2013, the #1 quarterback in the nation, who committed to a Penn State that was undermanned, under NCAA probation, had no postseason hopes, was looking like it's the end of the world for them. And he signed Christian Hackenberg. And that, to me, was impressive. And then Christian Hackenberg has a very good freshman season, honorable mention All Big Ten, and then Bill O'Brien goes off to the Houston Texans. And you would think, well, Christian Hackenberg, he's going to be fine. He was fantastic. For a freshman, he was fantastic. He's only going to get better. He only got worse. The only year he was honorable mention All Big Ten, any kind of All Big Ten mention, was his freshman year. And that was one of the jokes, with James Franklin not knowing how to use him and things like that his first few years. But Kevin, as a recruiter, how much does Bill O'Brien have to do? And how much does Ohio State already do for him?
Well, that's the thing. I mean, you can't necessarily. You can go to Penn State and look at that situation, and he's the head coach, so the buck stops there. But he's not the out on the road, all the weeks during the open visit periods and everything else. He's the closer. So then you go and you look at Alabama, and Alabama's name is going to recruit for Alabama just as much. Well, let me change that. Nick Saban's name, apparently, based on what the portal looks like right now, and we can get into that a little later, recruits itself. Ohio State largely does the same. Now, I for full disclosure, I mean, I got along really well with Corey Dennis. He was a good dude. He was always really good to me, very friendly. But how much was it a case of kids coming in to play under Corey versus to play under Ryan and play in Ryan's offense? So, the example could be brought up right away that, well, Jared Curtis, the 2026 quarterback, #1 quarterback in that class after Juju Lewis reclassified to 25, he, canceled his visit. A crystal ball came in for UGA. Well, there's also a couple inches of snow here, and it's not really based on what the weather is in Columbus, Ohio. It's what the weather is in Nashville, and whether or not you're going to drive up 65 or you're going to fly out of Nashville. There's probably some travel concerns. I know he's supposedly going out to Oregon, but again, if Jared Curtis is like the only egg that is broken in this situation to have this offense, this whole operation evolve, to have Ryan Day take the next step in his coaching on the coaching ladder and become CEO coach and have an offensive coordinator and a defensive coordinator who really are doing their things. Right. And I know I've really kind of gotten off on a tangent there, but Jim Knowles, not a great recruiter. I mean, I think that what recruits best for Jim Knowles and what will recruit best for Bill O'Brien is on the field results and actual development of these players. You want to go to the league, then these are the guys that you want to play under. These are the guys that you want to sit there and hook your wagon to. Clemson can have a slide in its athletic facility, and there could be 4 waterfalls at the USC facility. But if you're really concerned about the league, you know where to go.
The super chat here from Belisari. Thank you, OSU, for the Bill O'Brien hire. Sincerely, the rest of college football. And I understand that. I've seen the stat that he has been with New England and Alabama for like 10 years total and has like no titles, no Super Bowls or national titles. And it's like, how can this possibly be when what's gone on there? But that's what Ryan Day is hiring in terms of the reputation. I don't think he's worried about what other people think. It's fit, and it's what other coaches are suggesting to him in terms of reaching out and things like that. We'll see how it goes. I don't know if it's going to be great. I don't know if it's going to be bad. But Ferris, who exactly made this hiring decision? Ryan Day. Yeah, Ryan Day. He is the head coach. He makes the decisions on his assistant coaches. So that was definitely his call. And I saw, so ESPN posted this on Instagram, last night. Bill O'Brien to Ohio State as offensive coordinator. One of the first comments was from you guys might know him, Desmond Howard, and it said, in other words, meet the next head coach.
Is that what it said?
No. But I do like, now that we can ask you to, hey, do your Desmond Howard accent. We got your Australian accent. We got your dirty Southern accent, and but. The comment from Desmond Howard is, in other words, meet the next head coach for Ohio State. Tom, your thoughts?
Yeah, I don't think that's going to be how this goes at all. I mean, there's 2 possibilities here. One is this works, in which case, guess who's going to be the head coach for Ohio State if this works this year, Ohio State is certainly one of the national championship favorites, if not the flat out national championship favorite. It's like them and Georgia and maybe Texas this year, maybe. If it doesn't work, well, you're not bringing in the guy who it didn't work for. So no, I would put the odds of Bill O'Brien as the next head coach at Ohio State at, I guess you can't technically say, well, you could technically say 0, but it's never prudent to say 0. But I would say sub 1% that he is the next head coach at Ohio State. I wonder if Desmond Howard knows who's going to be the head coach at Michigan in 2024, because I think there's multiple possible answers there too.
Well, he is also the guy too that thought that a bridge lit up for support of Ukraine was in support of Michigan. So that just goes to show where his acumen is.
Yes. Let's hit some of these starred questions and start getting through this so we're not ignoring the people.
There we go.
This is a good
Billy
question.
Tuesday wants to know,
Tuesday.
Do we let Bill O'Brien hire a new offensive line coach, or is Fry safe?
Tom, the thought was the initial report from Football Scoop talked about the offensive coordinator would be able to bring somebody in at that position. I know Justin Fry has been telling recruits that he's safe, he's coming back. So now I think most position coaches tell recruits, "Oh yeah, no, I'm good. I'm totally good." Why? What have you heard something? What have you heard? So I would also think that when you're talking to these offense coordinators and interviewing them, you're talking to them about your staff as well, and in terms of thoughts, this and that. What have you heard? What do you know? Because the community of coaches all talk, and they all have opinions on a whole bunch of people. But I think at this point, and I may be wrong, I'm expecting Fry back.
I'm expecting Fry back as well, because Ohio State technically announced the hiring of Bill O'Brien. I think they've sort of.
I keep looking at my phone just for the email to come through.
And they haven't technically announced that Corey Dennis's contract is not being renewed, but we've all heard both of those things, and we've heard both of those things for a while now. And there were certainly some questions about would another offensive assistant go. in this sort of transition period. And it feels like sort of behind the scenes, the answer is trending towards no, that Justin Fry, Tony Alford, Keenan Bailey, all sort of, I'm expecting all three of those guys to be back, and Corey Dennis is gone. And then that leaves one more potential open spot on the coaching staff, which we'll get to, what they might do with that in a minute. But yeah, I think at this point, if we're not hearing stuff right now, I think that's probably a pretty good indication that you're going to see Justin Fry back for another year. Because, I heard Bill O'Brien's name, like I said, basically a week ago now, and heard it, and it did not seem like that was a brand new thing at that point. So Bill O'Brien has probably had time to watch some tape and figure out what he wants to do. If there are decisions that come down to him, I don't think he needs to walk into the building and then he finally hits play on the tape. I think he's probably coming in, if this is his decision, with an idea what he wants to do. And if we haven't heard other names as might be headed out the door, then I'm expecting it to be more or less status quo.
Yeah, I don't think he takes a job where he is either A, unhappy with the pieces around him, or B, not empowered to make those changes. And I think that it would be a lot easier to do everything in one fell swoop. I mean, Alabama's offensive line coach is out. I mean, it's somebody that Bill O'Brien, I think, is familiar with. There could have easily been a change there. So I think that he's going to ride with what he's got right now at this point, and then we'll see what 25 looks like. And the thing that I've said is I don't think that this is going to be a long-term situation. I think this is going to be a case of Bill O'Brien is the third property brother, and he's going to come in and he's going to get everything all fixed up and ready for resale at that point. And when Ryan Day's ready to either move to the league or ski behind his millions of dollars and Hartline gets the job or whatever it may be, Bill O'Brien will sit there and take one last look at Columbus and be like, that'll do, pig. That'll do.
The super chats.
Yep, we got a couple.
Do we have a couple?
Yeah,
hang on.
Yeah,
hang on.
20.
All right. So Ryan Dawes wants to know Brian Hartline as special teams coordinator. I think there's other guys on the staff who I might look at first. I mean, you could put him there, but I guess the question is, what does Brian Hartline want to do in his career? Because you are, as a head coach, you're obviously trying to win your games and reach all your goals and all that kind of stuff. But in terms of your staff, you're trying to sort of help your staff advance and in their own careers as well. And coaches are sort of cognizant of their coaching trees. And that's, because then if you have a coaching tree where you're getting guys prepared for whatever they want to do next, then good young assistants want to come work for you. So it's, you're looking out for the people around you, but you're also sort of looking out for yourself as well. What does Brian Hartline want to do? He interviewed for the University of Cincinnati head coaching job last offseason, but that, I don't think he had any real expectation. That was probably like a go get the experience of going through the process kind of thing. What does he want to do? Does he want to be a head coach? Does he want to be an offensive coordinator? Does he want to be like a play calling offensive coordinator? Does he just want to stay in Columbus and coach wide receivers and make a lot of money? And is he perfectly happy with where he is right now? I get the sense that Brian Hartline is happy with where he is right now, and he's not like in a rush to get out the door or anything like this. And if you told me 4 years from now, Brian Hartline was still coaching wide receivers and had the co-offensive coordinator title or whatever it is at Ohio State, I'd say, yeah, sure, I could believe that. I don't know that being a special teams coordinator necessarily helps him career-wise to get to whatever he wants to get to. But maybe it's just like, hey, this is a smart guy, and he can do, he would just be a good fit for this. I'm not expecting that to be the move, but I kind of would like to talk to Brian Hartline about, really honestly what your long-term plans are. And then that would probably tell me a lot more about what they're going to maybe try and do with him.
Well, I think he's still going to be co-offensive coordinator, and he's got enough on his plate right now that you're not going to look to give him that. Generally, the special teams coordinator is just another position coach that has no other massive duties. So I know Tony Alford is the like associate head coach for the offense. Keenan Bailey is the guy I keep throwing in there just because so many tight ends coaches are also the special teams coordinator because they only have 6 to 8, 9 guys in their room, including walk-ons. So they kind of can handle other duties. So I think you'll see that. Kevin, if we were to predict the special teams coordinator today, who are you putting your money on?
Why does he have to be a member of the coaching staff? Why does he have to be one of the 10? I mean, you could sit there and have you could have a quality control coach do it. I mean, we are not to unlimited staff numbers yet by any stretch of the imagination. That's something I think Ohio State is probably just getting sick of waiting on, but there's no reason to have them there. You're not necessarily going out and doing a ton of special teams recruiting in the first place. Pro Kick Australia will come to you with like 4 Aussies and a Kiwi. I mean, so it's not really a situation of where they have to be a counter. Now, there certainly are some rules as to what a position coach is able to do versus what an analyst is able to do in terms of game day, what in terms of practice and things of that nature. So you don't want to cut off your nose to spite your face. It's a good way to throw an additional title on somebody's name and maybe, throw them a couple bucks or whatever, because we know at Ohio State, all these coaches are hurting for cab fare right now. But, I think Keenan Bailey's the one that would make the most sense if it was going to be a staffer or maybe the new safeties coach, just like, all right, you're new, you get to do this. It's like when you're the rookie on the Supreme Court, you are the glorified coffee getter. That's what you have to do.
Next one from Mike Smith. Like you said, I can't imagine he's coming in to implement his offense. It seems like more of a trust hire, so he doesn't have to just hold his hand and can be the CEO, needed knowledge and experience. I think that's certainly the argument for the hire. I mean, you're bringing in someone who has had to do it on his own before. So if he's doing it sort of in conjunction with someone else like Ryan Day, who is obviously well-versed in the Ryan Day offense and it can spend a lot of time during the off season and maybe even sometime during the week, but then not necessarily have to worry about it as much during the game. That's when Ryan Day really needs to be freed up. He needs to be freed up some during the off season because you have more of the glad handing, backslapping, shaking hands, kissing babies kind of stuff you have to do now more almost than ever before. But then during the game, that's when a lot of the real, those very, very close games, the talent is equated games is what they call them. That's where, boy, managing the clock correctly, managing your timeouts correctly, really be able to step back and take like a big picture look. That's where this, I think, maybe helps Ryan Day the most. And those are moments where sometimes it's worked and sometimes it hasn't. They have lost a lot of very close games the last couple of years against talent is equated kinds of teams. Maybe, if this helps win one more of those this year, well, that's probably a very, very good move. Next one from Mike Farino. Something I've pointed out to other fans is that people keep comparing Bob's Bama teams to Sark's. Sark had a Heisman-winning wide receiver and a first-round running back with 4 draft picks on the line. Bob's wide receiver 1 was wide receiver 4 at OSU, a worse offensive line and running back. I mean, that's certainly true. And that's not just like, well, he made them worse. It's look at the NFL draft results from the year after. That is not, the NFL is not just going, well, you weren't in a very good offense, so therefore you're not. They are drafting on talent. That is what they're drafting on, and the draft results sort of bear that out.
Go ahead.
Sorry,
Kevin.
I'm trying to log back into the board to read something. I got logged out. I'm sitting here having to dig out my password, so I'm just going to sit there and put a dial tone on my line.
Well, I will say, moving on from Sarkisian, in 2020, they averaged 48.5 points a game, which was ridiculous. And then 40 in 2021 and 41.1 in 2022. And then, this year they dropped down to 34 points per game. I don't know if that was because they happened to lose Bill O'Brien or just, sometimes rosters change and so do circumstances and numbers go up, numbers go down. Ask Ohio State fans. You saw it this past season with Kyle McCord. Did Ryan Day suddenly become a bad offensive coach? No. Sometimes things just rosters are the way they are. and you have some circumstances there that aren't always conducive to big numbers. And the Jameson Williams thing, like he was very, very good, and Bryce Young was very, very good. And you win a Heisman. I think that's a feather in your hat as an offensive coach, as an offensive coordinator, when your position wins a Heisman. I don't, and I've seen, well, all he did was run around. All Bryce Young did was run around and save the day. It's like, well, yeah, he certainly did that. I can't argue that, but his position coach, is now Ohio State's offensive coordinator, and his Wikipedia page is pretty impressive. I'm just going to say that. Again, that's just information. That's just data. That's not an opinion.
Speaking of his Wikipedia page, you're going to read it and you're going to say, "Oh, he's from Dorchester, Massachusetts." Friends, let me translate that to you. Dorchester, Mass. That's how you say that. So not Dorchester. There's way fewer syllables than you think. Texas
he's just a Southie. He's just a Southie.
Yeah, pretty much. Yes. Texas or Busted says, if hiring Bill O'Brien allows me to watch Ryan Day, the head coach, instead of Ryan Day, the offensive coordinator, then I'm good with this hire. The lack of general awareness and aggression on game day is due to Day wearing too many hats. And, I go back to maybe the most recent example of this was Xavier Johnson. Did he get a first down in the first quarter against Michigan? I don't know, and we'll never know because they didn't challenge it and they didn't go back. And Xavier Johnson certainly thought he got a first down, but then they punted it away instead of having the ball at midfield. And that, you had a chance, you're near midfield, you had a chance to maybe go down and take the lead, and then they never had the lead in that game. So, if that's just one more thing that it sort of frees him up to do and think about, and not have to have his head, his brain spinning on, do I have to kick? Do I have to go? If I go, what do I run? Like, you just say, okay, have a 4th and 1 play ready, and we're going to figure it out. And so, yeah, I think this is, again, the argument for why you make this move. And I just like Tony, I am not saying this is 100%. This is a grand slam, 100% perfect hire. Nothing could possibly go wrong. That's not what anyone's saying. We're saying, here's the argument for this. I don't think it's a grand slam, 100% perfect, guaranteed to succeed hire. I also don't think this is a disaster. I also don't think anyone who's intelligent is laughing at Ohio State right now on this. I think there's a lot of, I could see where they made that move. Why the thinking behind that. We have a couple from Mika Hanna that I want to get to real quick. This is what we were talking about earlier in terms of the other side of, the Corey Dennis is out. So what do you do with the last position coach? Are you bringing in another quarterback coach specifically? Probably not. You're probably balancing your staff, which is something we've talked about once or twice on this show over the last few years. Mika Hanna says, will you cover the plan after LJ, and then follows up with any updates on Jason Taylor or any plan for after LJ? Don't want to end up in a Bama situation. Boy, don't want to end up in a Bama situation is not something you could have said very often in the last 15 years or so. But here we are.
But you'll take that Bama situation if it was preceded by 7 national championships or whatever. But Kevin, you got information on this one. Is that right?
I don't have anything new really. I mean, I know that that the pursuit of Jason Taylor is real. I know that, obviously, I think people got a little bit nervous when Jason Taylor's kid transferred to Miami. But the good news is, where things stand right now, transfer once, transfer twice, transfer thrice, if you will. So I think it just comes down to where Jason Taylor feels that his future is best suited at. And obviously Ohio State would have, this path would be kind of in a supportive / adjacent role for a year or so, and then take over the position that he already has with Miami. But I also have been told that Jason Taylor and Mario Cristobal, they're not going out and having mojitos together. They're not boys. They're not super close. So there's, I think that maybe the familiarity with South Florida and everything else, but he's a Pittsburgh guy originally. So, we'll see. As for if it's not Jason Taylor, I don't know. It's funny because I hear all sorts of names, and I wanted to get back to one point on the previous topic. All of a sudden was a friend of mine who I do respect his opinions a lot. He's in sports media as well. He's like, well, why didn't Ohio State go after Tommy Rees instead. And I then fell off my chair and injured myself because I was like, I can't believe somebody that I like this much mentioned that name to me, because that honestly was like, I may as well hire Tony for the OC job. I didn't say you, Tony Danza.
Oh, then you get into a who's the boss question, and I don't know if
Right.
Ryan Day wants to get into that.
No, certainly you don't. I could just hear him like yelling into his mic and his headset, Samantha. Super chat.
Boy, we've got so many things going on at once. Here we go. Super chat from Jeff Frazier. Guys, thanks again for the insight and entertainment. Kevin, waiting for your next food consumption challenge. As always, go Bucks.
Why do I always? I mean, we've only done one, and I did that one. I think that means that it needs to be one of you two guys, unless it's the
But you
devil.
do one food consuming challenge, and
Yeah,
then suddenly you are.
You can build 1,000 bridges and have one pickle challenge.
It's almost how that saying goes. Almost. Let's see. Yes, I'm. Yeah, I don't know. We've talked about it. We have had conversations off air. I'm in favor of just keeping this Kevin's thing. I think that's the best way to.
I think Tom needs to do the cinnamon challenge.
Stay in your lane. What is the cinnamon challenge?
Oh, Tom.
Oh, you have to eat like a spoonful of cinnamon, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. No, I'm not an idiot. I know how that goes. That's
debatable.
That's no, that's not. That's like the drink a gallon of milk challenge. Like I know how this story ends. I don't need to do this to figure that out. Like,
if your hand smells like gasoline, what?
Yeah. So next up from Mike Schaefer. We talked about this a little bit earlier, but I did want to punch this up because that is just an incredible avatar there. The dead Schembechlers, yes. How does this affect Brian Hartline? Does it help him or does it delay his coaching climb up the ladder?
I think it's good for Ohio State in that it delays it a little bit, but it also helps them. This keeps them at Ohio State a little bit longer. I think it does limit the maybe like the idea of, well, how much of this is your doing? Because right now he would be third on in the pecking order of the offense. It's always going to be Ryan Day, and then now it's going to be the play caller, and then it's Brian Hartline, and it's like, well, what are you really doing? And so much of the offensive coordinating that we talk about on the outside is it's just play calling, it's play calling, but obviously there's more to it than that. But Kevin, to me, this delays some things, and if he's okay with that, then that's even better for Ohio State.
Well, and I think there's still going to be a lot of debate, and we're never truly going to get clarity on how that offensive channel worked in 2023. Was it really coming from Brian? Was it really coming from Ryan? I'm going to be very interested in 24 to see where that play sheet is in terms of Ryan Day himself. Is it in his hand? Is it in his pocket? Is it in his gym bag? I mean, how much is he really going to relax on there? But I think if you're Brian Hartline and you're in this for the long haul, I want to be a coach and I want to do all this, and I understand all of the pitfalls and challenges and time constraints and everything else there. Learning under somebody like Bill O'Brien for a couple of years on what it's like to be the offensive coordinator, not what it's like to be the head coach, because Ryan Day, yes, as the play caller had, that in his arsenal, things he was doing as head coach. But if Hartline's really able to sidle up to Bill O'Brien and learn the intricacies and learn some things, it's only going to help his resume. I was talking to somebody the other day. He's like, well, what are you going to do now that it's the off season? I said, the off season, I'm busy. I'm as busy as I've ever been. He's like, yeah, but what do you do during that, what month? I'm like, you mean couple of weeks where things get really slow? I'm like, well, I try to learn something new. I try to learn something new every year because I'm not getting any smarter, and I'm already as handsome as I'm going to be. So, I didn't say that it was that handsome. I'm just not going to get any more handsome. So I try to learn something, and so I do that and move forward with that. And I think it would bode well for Brian Hartline to make this next year or 2 years a case of really learning the intricacies if this is what he wants to do. and and go from there.
All right, super chat from Mike Farino. Have you guys seen that Tom Loy is expecting Julian Sayin, the number 1 quarterback for the class of 2024? He committed to Alabama, signed with Alabama, enrolled at Alabama, and then now is in the transfer portal. He apparently really liked Bill O'Brien in his initial recruitment to Bama and is entering the transfer portal this morning. So I just texted someone to see if I could get some more information on that. We'll see if I get a text back. But it's at least interesting timing given the 2026 quarterback who was supposed to be visiting this weekend and then now is suddenly not visiting this weekend. There's a lot of stuff that's sort of changing. And right now, I don't have anything more than just to kind of cock an eyebrow and say, that's interesting. I don't have anything beyond that, but maybe we'll see if we can get some new information for you shortly.
Well, I'll say to this that everybody's natural concern is that Air Noland is going to freak out and that Tavian St. Clair is going to freak out. Air Noland already on campus as an early signee for Ohio State. Tavian St. Clair is still a class of 25 guy. Elite talent is not going to shy too much away from elite competition. I think that if they were to bring in Julian Sayin, I think that would probably give Tavian St. Clair maybe something more to think about than Air Noland. We've seen through the years programs take in 2 quarterbacks in the same class. So that's not anything that's necessarily out of the ordinary. And the reality is I think we all understand the mobility of quarterbacks these days with the portal. So with the Sand Camp being really sold on Bill O'Brien, this horrible, awful hire. Why the hell would Ohio State ever do that? Go hire Tommy Rees. With all of that, obviously he is resonating somewhat on the recruiting trail still, even being in the league for a year. So I think Ohio State would be silly not to look, because Ohio State was, even before Nolan got into the class for Ohio State, the Buckeyes were still kind of kicking the tires on Julian Sayin to see there. So they've evaluated him. They like him. I think that they would take him. But if this gets into an open market NIL war or whatever, does Ohio State really put a lot of money in that situation? I mean, you do get yourself to, the number of quarterbacks that you'd like to have. But I think that if that all happens, you're going to potentially lose an older one, and you could even potentially lose an older one when the portal reopens in spring.
Well, I'll just say, reading Tom Loy's tweet that's being referenced, here it is. It says, I'm watching USC and Ohio State for Alabama transfer quarterback Julian Sayin, waiting for him to go in officially, but based on intel I've received, my early crystal ball is on the Buckeyes. And so that would be interesting. In terms of the Jared Curtis thing, my understanding on that one was that was a two-way thing. It's like Ohio State is like, let's wait to visit again when we have everything situated. Now, will he's a 2026 kid, so he may commit in the interim to somebody else, but the earliest you're going to get him on the field is like 2027. So you're not really concerned about that right now in terms of this isn't impacting any of your decision-making process moving forward, because you are 4 years away from that being an impact, and you've got more pressing concerns and more pressing opportunities apparently in front of them.
Yeah, 2027 is a long way away. I mean, based on the amount of effort that is being put into the 2024 season, it sure feels like there are a lot of field folks around the Ohio State football program that feel that like the 2024 season is going to be something of a defining one for the program moving forward. So, 2027 is great. You'll get there eventually. You got to focus on the present right now, and the future is maybe 2025. But sure, you're going to be recruiting those guys, but with the portal, with NIL, with guys you can be, have committed for a year and a half, and then they flip 2 hours before they're supposed to sign. I don't know. You're going to have to keep putting in the work on the long-term stuff, but nothing is locked in, and we're talking 2 years out. So, well, almost 2 years out. So, yeah, there's a lot of road between here and when anything involving any of those guys would really matter. Of course, they could always reclassify. One more thing to have to think about. Here's one from Jeff.
Mm-hmm.
I hear this guy, Bill O'Brien, can be difficult, let's say. So can he get along with the new age college players, or is that going to send them running?
There's a
I'm
difference
scrolling.
between cross and direct and curt with guys and beating the crap out of them. I mean, it's not like he's going to be beating them up or anything like that. That's not going to fly anymore. What worked in the 70s isn't going to work here in the 2020s. I know that there is this belief of a certain amount of entitlement or whatever, and especially now that players are getting paid and everything else. I think you have to kind of pick and choose. It's kind of like the black stripe. For some players, some incoming players, they play better or practice better with that stripe on because they've got something to prove. I've got to lose the start thing. With other players, you got to give them that early measure of success. And that's why it's not always going to be a case of Jeremiah Smith very well may not be the first Ohio State early enrollee to lose his stripe. I'm just going to say that. But honestly, in terms of talent, you guys don't let me play in your black stripe draft. But if one of you wants to bring me on as a consultant, I can help.
I don't know how bronze medal would look against your skin. I don't know. As you said, you're not getting any more handsome, and gold and silver, sure, but I mean, obviously, that's not going to be.
I'm not going to say what I was going to say, or I'm going to suddenly find myself on the cot of shame. I'm just going to talk about the guy who sleeps on the cot of shame all the time, Tom Orr. But now I don't even remember what the hell I was talking about. But he's gruff, and I think that's necessary. Urban Meyer was not coddling players. Urban Meyer was not sitting there and tucking them into bed and making sure that they had the night light on and everything else. Players walked around in fear with Urban Meyer, and things seemed to work okay. And if you listen to our neighbors to the north, they seem to think that Ohio State has gotten a little soft, a little complacent, soft. So maybe this is exactly what you need. Maybe this is the kind of culture change that you need as a kick in the pants.
Well, I think you look at the Blue Jackets, and I mean, always a model that you want to follow in terms of franchise stability and excellence. But, the Blue Jackets after last year, I think felt like it was probably a little much. They overcorrected from John Tortorella, who was the sort of disciplinarian coach. And then you brought in Brad Larson, who was a little bit too much of a player's coach, and that very much didn't work. So then they were going to overcorrect the other way and bring in Mike Babcock, who was maybe a little too much of an old school disciplinarian coach. And now maybe they've overcorrected in the other direction again in terms of Pascal Vincent, who is the current coach, who's maybe a little bit more of a player's coach. Bill O'Brien's not a Mike Babcock for sure. He might be more of a John Tortorella, where it's sort of the East Coast and a little. Kevin, you have spent some time on the East Coast. What's the best way to? You know what? Never mind. I have a story.
No, I want to answer this.
I have a story here. It involves a bagel store in New Jersey.
I would prefer the word pricks.
It involves a bagel store in New Jersey, and Tony Gerdeman ordering after me. And I had ordered bagels to bring home. This was on a Rutgers trip a couple of years ago. I had ordered bagels to come home, and the guy at the bagel store started yelling at Tony because he had also wanted to order a bunch of bagels. The guy's like, I can't sell you all these bagels. I gotta sell sandwiches. I can't just sell bagels to you. Wait, crazy? And Tony was like a little taken aback. And as I'm like gleefully texting everyone else on staff about this, someone asked, was it like, was this like this guy like legitimately angry? And he said it was like a New Jersey 2, but it's an Ohio 7. Like that's kind of like the Massachusetts is kind of like that, where it's just like you don't have the Midwestern nice thing, Minnesota nice, Midwestern nice. No one ever says Massachusetts nice. That's I think maybe the point here. And so it's going to be the edges have not been sanded off necessarily, but that's not necessarily a bad thing.
Why do you want all these bagels for sale? I got to sell these bagels, and you want all these bagels for sale.
You come into a bagel store and you want to buy my bagels? You get out. You get the heck out that door, mister.
You idiots. I think, Tom, you bought 3 dozen. Kevin, you bought 2 dozen.
I bought a baker's dozen. I think Tom bought like 30. dozen. I mean, it was like,
You went like 3 dozen, didn't you?
Yeah, I bought 3. Yes. Excuse me for having friends that I was bringing bagels back for. That's my bad.
Yeah. So me, after all, in line behind those two, and I'm just like, sir, may I please have a dozen bagels? He's like looking at like you have 2 heads. Like, what do you want from me? I'm like, can I have a dozen bagels? If I sell these bagels to you, I won't have any bagels to sell the rest of the day. It's like, do you want to stay here all day long, or do you want to sell out and go home? Like,
you know where
what
we
if you
Wisconsin at that dairy barn that we went to, where we were all able to buy cheese. I mean, there were no issues, even though Tom gleefully gave Tony a bunch of grief about maybe they won't sell you cheese either.
We have fun on these road trips, don't we, folks? Mike Smith says, if Dave believes his hire will make or break him, you cannot blame him for going after a guy who can handle the pressure of the highest standards. Bill O'Brien does not need protecting. He's used to it.
Yeah, and when you are that gruff personality, you've also been around other gruff personalities. He's been around Nick Saban and Bill Belichick. So it's not like he's being eased into this with a shoulder massage. I think you'll have some good cop, bad cop type of stuff with Day and O'Brien as well. So, it's like O'Brien will go yell at players, and they'll come over to Ryan and he'll be like, it's okay, sweetie. Don't worry about it. Your dad just had a rough day, but I think the culture aspect of it, the hardness of it is it's fine. It's okay. It's another aspect, another way to get what you want out of players. And you guys mentioned the Urban Meyer thing, and a lot of players at Ohio State, Urban Meyer didn't know their names, and so there was never any concerns about the culture there or the toughness or whatever until 2015, of course. But then you contrast that with the Jim Tressel stuff, when he would have players, every single player, take a test about their teammates. You have to know hometowns and things like that, and nicknames and sisters' names and stuff like that. There are many, many different ways to do it. And I don't know that Urban Meyer could do what is required today. And what is required today is what Ryan Day is doing, and what Nick Saban softened. I think we would all agree, that he softened over these last couple of years, and it led to no national championships for him either.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's a little bit of a correlation causation thing there with Nick Saban not, softening, but also not winning national championships. I got to tell you, if a punt that Michigan had a muff on at the end of that game goes 1 yard further into the end zone, and it's a safety and not a ball at the one situation at the end of regulation, I think Nick Saban probably retires with a national championship this year. So there's a little bit of correlation causation thing there. And, I think he was softening more because it felt like he sort of knew this was maybe his last year. He was not, he could sort of see the light at the end of the tunnel and was sort of enjoying the ride a little bit more. I think I would attribute that more to that than to, because he was nice, then they didn't win. That can be true. We've talked about that in some context around Ohio State, but I don't think that's a hard and fast, absolutely. If Ohio State moves the ball 10 yards closer against Georgia and makes the field goal, does that mean that Ryan Day was secretly mean the whole time? Or does that mean that they were very, very close and they beat Georgia? And, Kirby Smart is not known as history's nicest person. So I think you have to be very careful with drawing, very clear, dark, direct lines between nice equals bad and mean equals good. Eric Biddle says prediction for championship next year: Ohio State will play Texas, maybe Georgia. It's interesting without, Alabama with no Nick Saban. Boy, Alabama seems like they have plummeted out of that picture very quickly. But you do have a couple former Nick Saban assistants right there on the list of teams that could play Ohio State. And really, I think those are probably the 3 teams that I would have, in some order in terms of most likely to win that 2024 national championship.
Texas has done really well in the transfer portal. They have become the place that a lot of Alabama transfers are ending up at Texas. I think the biggest thing that I have against Texas getting there is unfamiliarity with the SEC. Year one in the SEC. Even if you are significantly more talented than most of the teams there, I think that first run going through can always be a challenge. We've seen teams enter the Big Ten, and really, I kind of circle this one mostly with Penn State. Penn State, when it joined the Big Ten, it's like, we've dominated as an independent. We're going to come in and we're going to run this place. And that has not really happened all that much. Texas and OU joining the SEC. I think I don't have the Texas schedule in front of me. If only are on a computer, but I just haven't punched one up yet. Georgia, it's hard to bet against Georgia. I'm going to say something really unpopular here. Caleb Downs ends up at Georgia. That secondary is going to be obscene. I'm not exactly as sure what that offense is going to look like, but I think the three teams that Eric mentions there are all very much in the mix. I think that people are going to try and put Oregon in the mix too, but Oregon's got the same thing that Texas does. It's going into a new conference, and it's going to even more so than Texas. It's going to have to play several games cross country. So I'm looking forward to 24, and I know it's only January 19th, and we're 298 days or whatever the hell it is away from the Akron game. I guess that's a different show, but bring it on.
225 days, Kevin. Come on,
there
get it
you
together.
go. There you go. Well, I knew you knew it.
Let's run through the Texas schedule real quick since we're here.
Yeah.
Colorado State. I'm going to be brave and say that's a win. At Michigan, boy, that doesn't look quite as daunting in 2024 as it did in 2023, does it? UTSA at home, ULM at home, Mississippi State at home. So they're going into their off week on October 5th at 6-0. After that, Oklahoma in the Red River Shootout, and then Georgia, back-to-back weeks. They have Georgia at home, but they have Georgia. So, there's a loss or two there. At Vanderbilt, week off. Florida at home, at Arkansas, Kentucky at home, at Texas A&M. Other than, man, it's going to be great to have Texas at Texas A&M on Thanksgiving weekend again. Tony, your thoughts?
Well, my favorite part of this is that October 19th game with Georgia at Texas is coinciding with an Ohio State bye week. So where are we going? We will actually be able to watch that. But if you look at the Georgia schedule, Tom, it is also a bit interesting. They open the season against Clemson in Atlanta. They host Tennessee Tech, not the Vols, but then they're at Kentucky. Then they're off for a week. Then they're at Alabama, home to Auburn, home to Mississippi State, then at Texas, then off a week before they play Florida. And then it's at Ole Miss, Tennessee at home, then UMass and Georgia Tech. So that's a pretty good schedule. That's a pretty tough schedule, I should say, for Georgia. Certainly tougher than the one they had this past season. And it doesn't really matter if there's a loss or two in there, because a loss or two is going to get you into the playoffs anyway. So we kind of need to reprogram our brain in terms of, well, there's a loss there, so good luck making the playoffs. I think at this point it's 3 losses and you're most likely out. 2 losses and you're still most likely in, especially if you win a conference. But
who do you lose?
Losing once.
When do you lose? I think when you lose is going to matter too. And that UGA schedule with, the traditional chicken bleep weekend, the weekend before the final week of the season, and then having Georgia Tech there, they have a couple of chicken bleep weekends there. They get through the meat of their schedule by early-ish November, and then can kind of decelerate and fatten up on those last 2 opponents.
That's a schedule where, we obviously have to see how the games play out and how whether the teams all play up to what their helmets suggest they should be next year. But, Clemson at Alabama, at Texas, at Ole Miss, home for Tennessee. Only one of those is a true home game. So you've got 5 real good opponents, only one in a true home game. If they go 2-3, there are certainly going to be people who are arguing for them to make it. That's the kind of schedule where if things break right, you might be able to make it at 9-3 with that schedule. But then, if you're the 11 seed Then you're going up to, I don't know, Happy Valley or something during the first round of the playoffs, and that's a whole separate, very interesting conversation. Man, this is going to be a real, real good season. I am real excited about this season. Here's an interesting one. Travis Telemake, Michigan fan here. Honest question: if OSU gets rolled by Michigan in 2024 with a depleted roster, what happens to Ryan Day?
I'll answer this the same way I always answer it. What else is happened during the season? Because Ohio State can lose to Michigan 50-0, but what else happens? Does Ohio State go on to make the playoffs? Do they play in a championship game? Tell me that. Do they then what? There's so many other situations and scenarios and items of interest that I don't think you can base it on one game on terms of what happens to Ryan Day. Tell me what else happens. I don't care if he loses the Michigan game in terms of he should be fired for that. Like it's whatever else is going on. Now, I will also say you've got a new AD, Kevin, and that may factor in as well.
Well, and there's another part of this equation too. We're talking about a Michigan team with a depleted roster. Is this Michigan team with a depleted roster 11-0, 8-3, 5-6? Going into that game, I think that there certainly is a. If it's a 5-6 Michigan team that comes and beats Ohio State, I think that Ryan Day is in deep trouble at that point. If it's a depleted roster. And head coach Sharon Moore, I'm just going to start speaking that into existence, gets the most out of them, and they come into Columbus and win. But Ohio State was 11-0, and or 11-0 going into it, and still goes to the Big Ten championship game because there's no division, so nobody gets the bye week for the championship game. There's a lot that can happen there. So Travis, I'm sorry that I can't give you a definitive answer, but there are way too many variables in play there at that point. And without shaping it a little bit more, and it could take an hour to shape the narrative. I don't know.
Right. Ryan Day losing to Michigan, missing the Big Ten championship game, and going out in the first round of the playoffs as the 11 seed is very different than Ryan Day losing to Michigan, but still making the Big Ten championship, winning the Big Ten championship, and then winning the national championship. You're not firing your coach coming off of a national championship. We've seen a lot of stuff in college football over the years. I don't believe we've ever seen a performance-related firing directly following a national championship season. I am not expecting to see one anytime soon. So, yeah, the answer to that is it depends. Mike Freno says, what's happening to Bama is why you can't fire Day without a home run lined up to replace him. It can always get worse if you make the wrong hire. And that's a really interesting it's a whole separate conversation, but it's a really interesting conversation because, okay, so let's start with Ohio State and Alabama are not necessarily the same program. You know how I know this? Because I can look at Alabama when Nick Saban is not the head coach, and when Ohio State when fill in the blank is not the head coach. You can say Urban Meyer, you can say Jim Tressel, you can say Woody Hayes, you can say Ryan Day, you can say whatever you want. Ohio State has been a far better team consistently, not specifically tied to one coach in particular. Alabama has been great when Bear Bryant is there. Alabama has been great when Nick Saban is there. When those two guys have not been there, boy, there's a lot of there's a lot of like 17th place in the AP poll there for Alabama when it's not Nick Saban, when it's not Bear Bryant. Ohio State is, outside of maybe Oklahoma, and probably even more so than Oklahoma. If you go through their average poll rankings or their average number of wins per season, per decade, whatever, Ohio State is at the top of all of those lists. Ohio State is probably the least dependent on this one amazing coach being there. Alabama, Nick Saban's first year, lost to Louisiana Monroe, not LSU, not Louisiana Tech, not Louisiana Lafayette, Louisiana Monroe, the fourth? No, sorry, I forgot about Tulane. Fifth best program in the state of Louisiana, beat Alabama in Tuscaloosa, Nick Saban's first year. And that's after Dave Shula got fired, right? Mike Shula. No, Dave Shula. Mike Shula. Sorry. there's probably a lesson here about hiring the sons of famous famous football coaches. But I think if we haven't learned that lesson yet, we
Jay
might not never
Shore,
learn.
because everybody's kid is named Jay
Yeah,
Paterno,
yeah,
Jay Harbaugh.
yeah. Boy, the Bowden family had a bunch of distinguished kids. Yeah, there's a lot.
Beppo, Gummo.
Harpo Bowden. Well, his stint at Clemson was not particularly distinguished. There's a lot of Shemp in the college football coaching descendants realm, is I guess the point. But so I think we got to have the conversation that the baseline at Bama is lower than the baseline at Ohio State. But that being said, I think the point here about how losing a coach can really reshape your team in a not very good way, especially depending on when it happens. I think that's going to be something that potentially really changes how the hiring and firing process plays out.
I'm looking back through the AP poll for Alabama in the 25 years between Bear Bryant and Nick Saban, and they're not always ranked at the end of the year. They're not always 2006 they weren't ranked. 2005 they were 13th at the end of the year, or 8th at the end of the year. 2004 unranked. 2003 unranked. 2002 11th. 2001 they were in the rankings for the first week, and then after that they were done. And you have to probably go back to like 1993 when they won national championship for them, or so, whichever year that was. But like it's there's a lot of desert there, and Alabama is not nearly as consistent as Ohio State has been over the years. And they've got, once Julian Stayen hits the portal, I believe that will be 30 players who have departed for the portal. I think they brought in 4 or 5. They've probably lost another 20 to graduation and NFL. So we're talking, and who knows what's going to happen after the spring. You're probably losing 50 guys that's probably a conservative number, and you have to replace them. How? I don't know how many they signed in 2024, probably around 25 or 28, something like that. I can look, but so they're bringing in at this point 32 new people to replace those 50. So they're going to have to bring in another 20 guys between now and the spring transfer window to just have a full roster. And that's a lot to ask for a new coach when you're trying to build relationships and you're saying, hey, come on over. And they're like, I don't know you. I know a bunch of other people. And it can't just be all Washington players or people that Kalen DeBoer has recruited, or the assistant coaches that he's bringing in, which I really like, hiring some head coaches from smaller schools. Like, you don't want to just bring necessarily the best players from those schools with the coaches, because is that really Alabama level? So it's going to be difficult to get them to a quality 85 immediately. I don't think they actually can.
Well, and I want to, you sort of touched on it a little bit more there, but let's run through bowl games real quickly. Last 5 years before Bear Bryant retired at Alabama: Sugar Bowl, Sugar Bowl, Sugar Bowl, Cotton Bowl, Cotton Bowl. Okay. And then his last season as he's retiring, Liberty Bowl. After that, here are the bowls that Alabama went to between Bear Bryant's retirement and Nick Saban's taking over: Sun Bowl, Aloha Bowl, Sun Bowl, Hall of Fame Bowl, Sun Bowl, Sugar Bowl. That was the year that they won the national championship. That they lost to. I'm now looking at the wrong one. That was not the right Sugar Bowl. They lost to Miami in the Sugar Bowl that year. Fiesta Bowl, which was not really quite the prestigious bowl it is now, and they lost that one 34-7 to Louisville. Blockbuster Bowl, one we all know and love. Then the Sugar Bowl that they won with Gene Stallings over Miami when they won the national championship. So that was that one. Then the Gator Bowl, the Citrus Bowl, the Outback Bowl, the Music City Bowl, Orange Bowl, Independence Bowl, Music City Bowl, Cotton Bowl, Independence Bowl. And then Nick Saban's first year, they went to the Independence Bowl again. I mean, there is not, I don't want to diminish the history and prestige of the Blockbuster Bowl, but also
they really like El Paso, going to the Sun Bowl a lot. Maybe
they really like El Paso. That's always a possibility. Here's a super chat from Chocolate Chip. OSU's preseason AP poll has been the top 25 for 60 years and counting. Second is like 23 years.
In current streak, I saw the same graphic, and that I was kind of surprised with the distance between Ohio State and whoever number 2 was. I should have grabbed a screenshot of it last night, but I didn't. And Ohio State, what is their bad period of football in current the live ball era? I mean, we can go back to when Ohio State football started back in the dark ages, and they weren't very good to begin with. And we know that Ohio State spotted the team up north like the first 15 games in the series or something like that. But Ohio State 6-7 in 2011, a year that they really shouldn't have even gone to a bowl game in the first place. A little bit of bad during the Coop era, but this is not a program that's had been a sustained loser at any point during since World War I.
The last 30 years, the worst stretch is 1999 to 2001, which is 3 whole years. They played in New Year's Day bowl games in 2 of those years. They were 7-5 in both of them. But the year before that, they finished second in the AP poll. And the year after that, they won the national championship. So, that was sort of a weird 3-year transition stretch that, okay, but you had bookended with pretty good results on both ends. And before that, you got to go to the end of the Earl Bruce era, the start of the John Cooper era. And, that's where they lose to Indiana 2 years in a row, and they lose, 41-7 to Indiana 1 year. But, that's a coaching transition period. And it took Cooper a while to get going, but you go back 30 years, starting in 1993, they go 10-1-1, and they win a share of the Big Ten championship. And then 95, 96, 97, 98, they're in that national championship hunt every year. And then after that, you have that 3-year stretch. And then Jim Tressel shows up, and it's basically been Ohio State football being modern Ohio State football ever since then. Mike Farino says, not saying you can't fire Day, just that you had better have a home run hire lined up and announce 5 seconds after firing occurred. Previous coaching transitions didn't have the transfer portal the same way. I mean, if they can do it the way they did the Urban Meyer thing, where they play Michigan on Saturday and then they introduce future Hall of Fame coach on Tuesday, I'm sure that's the way they would like to have that transition go whenever that transition happens.
Yeah, that's a very special circumstance where you've just got a guy hanging out in the wings, doing some TV here and there, chilling, just waiting, not a vulture at all. Not waiting, not ready to pick off the roadkill. No. But just great happenstance for Ohio State that it ended up that way. All
right. Drew Dozer, the Prophet, says, do we have Tecmo Bo Jackson? I mean, the running back room is going to be pretty good this year. I don't know if there's a Tecmo Bo Jackson in there. However, there could be a Bo Jackson on the team starting in 2025. There is a running back from Cleveland, Villa Angela St. Joseph, I believe, who is a very, very highly touted running back. Ohio State has offered him. I'm expecting him to end up with Ohio State. So Ohio State could literally have Bo Jackson at running back starting next year. Next one, it's just me. Tim79 says, will Bill O'Brien stay for more than 2 years if Ohio State wins a championship? Well, if Ohio State wins a championship, do you care? That, I think, would be my response to that.
Kevin.
Yeah, I mean, Bill O'Brien's only 54 years old, so it's not like he's somebody who's up against retirement age at this point. But he seems to kind of be a little bit of a journeyman in terms of bouncing around some. As people were trying to say early in the show, oh, it's because he gets fired. No, it's not. Yes, has he been relieved of duties in some of his jobs? Yes, but he's not. That's not how he exits every department. I think we just have to kind of see what's going on in the head coaching position. If Ohio State wins a championship, then Ryan Day, I don't think it's a case of, well, Ryan Day's going to say, well, mission accomplished, now I'm off to the league or whatever. I think we're going to see Ryan Day, unless fans run him out of town first. I think we're going to see him here through the at least the conclusion of RJ's high school days. And then at that point, maybe a reassessment, some younger daughters, but with them not playing high school football, maybe not necessarily the same scrutiny in terms of moving a kid around a lot. I mean, we sat there and with Ross Bjork, his eldest son is graduating high school and will be playing football at Tarleton State. But the job works out in a perfect point of where he's finishing up his high school, and it's not like he's having to move during his senior year. Signed a kid who had to move during his junior year of high school and has never gotten over it, and is why he's such an angry son of a bitch.
And just in case you were not up to speed on Ryan Day's kids, RJ Day is entering his sophomore year this fall. He is a 2027 high school graduate.
I will be interested to see what the contract is, because Jim Knowles was a 3-year deal, I believe. Brian Hartline was a 3-year deal. So as coordinator, will he also get that 3-year deal? I know Urban would always ask for 2 years from his coaches, and I don't know that Ryan Day will be any different, other than the fact that sometimes he's asking for 3 years from, like, the coordinators, including your special teams coordinator.
Mike Smith talking about we surprised we never heard Kingsbury pop up. Ryan Day doesn't want to bring in a coordinator probably that wants to have all of his own ideas. I mean, I said it earlier, and I know not everybody can be on for every minute of the show. We've been on for an hour 20. Thank you for everybody who's been part of this. Be sure to hit that thumbs up. It helps us out a great deal. Subscribe to the channel. If you're listening on one of the podcasting platforms, leave us a 5-star review. That helps us get distributed to more great Buckeye fans, and even some terrible ones. But as for even for Kingsbury, I don't think that you want to sit there as a head coach and bring in somebody who's going to try and, I don't want to say necessarily usurp you, but, have his own ideas and change things around. And I don't think if you're Kingsbury or somebody like that you're going to want to come in and be having to paint between, the lines of the picture that the head coach lines out. So, Kingsbury probably works better for a defensive minded head coach, because then you come in and you run your own system and there you go.
I think he was interviewing with the Bears for the OC job as well this week.
Ed Rogers, this is going back to the Michigan, how close Alabama came to beating Michigan in the Rose Bowl. He says that wouldn't have been a safety. The Michigan player wouldn't have had possession on the field. That was a punt, not a kickoff. So that was on a kickoff, you have to have possession, because we saw that in the Cotton Bowl, there was a Missouri player who touched it in the field of play and then went back into the end zone and took a knee, and it was a touchback. On a punt, that's a live ball. If it touches, as soon as it touches the receiver, and it did touch the receiver on that one, that's a live ball, and the offense can fall on it and score a touchdown, or fall on it and get the ball at the 1. If the returner has it in the end zone, it is still a live ball. You do not need possession on a punt. It's a different rule for punts and kickoffs. So just to clarify that,
what's a muff and things like that, right?
Yeah, and you can't advance a muff. There's a bunch of specific rules on that. But yes, that would have been a live ball. It would have been a safety / a touchdown if Alabama had recovered it in the end zone or tackled the Michigan returner in the end zone. From Mika Hanna, could we go after Olas Alinen? Is he in the portal? I have not seen him in the portal yet, but I know that there's been a lot of activity there. Olas Alinen, by the way, an offensive lineman, class of 2023, just went through his true freshman year at Alabama. Ohio State was very interested in him. He's from somewhere in Scandinavia.
Where is the CBJ GM from? Same country.
Isn't he from Finland? I believe.
Then Olas is finished then.
Okay.
Because when he came in to visit, they involved the CBJ GM in all of that process. I was like, oh, that's pretty cool. They got a good shot of that. I mean, how many? I'm just going to say that he's finished because I don't know off the top of my head. How many Finnish people could there be in Tuscaloosa? Apparently, it doesn't matter. I've not seen his name in the portal. Mm-hmm. I mean, he could be the guy that benefits from all these other guys going into the portal and could be a starter next year. So you don't know, but my understanding was like really the only offensive lineman that Ohio State was really heavily pursuing in this portal run here is Caden Proctor, who's probably going to end up at Iowa. That doesn't mean that Ohio State isn't going to bring in another offensive lineman. I just tend to believe, unless a perfect storm happens, that's going to be something that they're going to sort out in the next window, which will be the spring window, which is what produced Josh Simmons. And people will be like, well, I mean, if you can only get Josh Simmons, but you never know. I mean, you don't know what's going to happen. We're seeing unprecedented movement from roster to roster. I think Ohio State has a plan in place, but time will tell.
And I think the other thing is the transfer portal window for Michigan or for Alabama might be closing at some point in the coming weeks. the Washington transfer portal. I mean, there have been people who have sort of implied that Ohio State might be interested in one of the Washington offensive linemen. I haven't seen that from anyone real credible, but transfer portal could be opening for Michigan at some point if hypothetically there was a coaching change there in the coming week. So, and then if that happens, is there probably they're hiring Sharon Moore, probably, but is there they hire someone and then someone else's transfer portal opens? That's the thing right now is the transfer portal it's closed, sort of, but not entirely. And the last one I had saved for us from Ben Day, what will Hartline's position be now, wide receiver coach or co-offensive coordinator?
Well, the wide
yes, I think
coach
it's
will be absolutely in there, and they're not going to strip them of titles and things. So I don't. What's his title versus what are his duties? I mean, I think that duties are the things that you need to be more concerned about is what's going on there than what the title is. Because as Tony said probably about an hour ago, Tony Alford has associate head coach, whatever. I mean, Larry Johnson's got like adjunct head coach. I mean, there's all these other titles that don't mean anything other than just a path to be able to pay coaches more than what you normally would be able to. I mean, he's absolutely going to work with the wide receivers. I think he's absolutely going to be involved in the offensive game planning. I think a good deal of his work too is going to be working with Bill O'Brien, sharpening the sword and becoming, more than just a player's coach. Hey, I go out, I recruit, a bunch of 4- and 5-star guys, and this is all awesome. There's more to it, and I think that's where we're going to see it.
This super chat here from AR Stab, OSU's last 3 coaches made the CFP if Luke Fickell counts. I think the thing that people sometimes don't realize is that every head coach hired since Woody Hayes has been a Hall of Famer or is trending towards that. And you go from Woody Hayes, Hall of Fame, Earl Bruce, Hall of Fame, John Cooper, Hall of Fame, Jim Tressel, Hall of Famer, to Urban Meyer. Well, they put in there Luke Fickell, who is one of the best, most highly thought of coaches in college football right now. Obviously, it's a little too early to put him in the Hall of Fame. Urban Meyer will be there. It's obviously too early to put Ryan Day in there. But when we talk about the consistency in the AP polls and things like that, look at the head coaching. And the consistency there has led to the consistency in the success. And you look at the other programs and just throwing some of the Alabama coaching names out there, whether it's Mike Price, Mike DeBose, Rich Rodriguez for about a weekend, Shula, Dennis Franchione leaving for Texas A&M from Alabama. Like, there is a long line of pretty unimpressive coaches at Alabama, which led to a long line of pretty unimpressive records. And now Kalen DeBoer, I think everybody's very, very high on. And so I good luck. You're not going to be able to continue to do what Nick Saban did. And it's just like I said with Ryan Day, just be somewhere between Urban Meyer and Jim Tressel. So with Kalen DeBoer, just be somewhere between Bear Bryant and Nick Saban. And I think you'll be just fine. It should be very easy for you to do. So anybody have anything else before we go?
Did we get to the super chat?
Yes, that's exactly what I've been talking about.
Okay, sorry. That's fine. I was pulling up something because there was another question I did want to get to real quick from I think it was Odysseus. Yes. Odysseus says, what if they hire Sharon Moore? What if Michigan hires Sharon Moore and he gets a show cause? Now, a show cause does not mean you can't. A show cause means that you have to go and appear before the NCAA every 6 months. You have to, if you're hiring someone, you have to show cause for why that person should be able to be hired. It's a significant impediment to being able to be hired. If the person's a current coach, they have to go before a committee every 6 months and say why the coach, here's how we know this coach has stayed in line with the NCAA rulebook. It sets you up for more potential penalties down the line if you're going in every 6 months and swearing on a stack of Bibles that you're following all the rules, and then they find out you're not following all the rules. That can make a bigger problem down the line. It does not prohibit you from hiring or retaining the coach. So I think that's a little bit of a common misperception there. But there's a lot of ground between here and when the NCAA wraps that whole case up. So we'll see we'll see what comes out in the notice of allegations for Michigan, and which coaches are implicated in connection with what stuff, and then we'll be able to talk about it in a much more informed way.
Yeah, you don't go and hire a coach from somewhere else who has a show cause, but if your own coach has it, you're like, well, it is what it is. And if they do promote him to head coach before, say, in the next month or so, then obviously that's going to be well before any NCAA infraction. It's going to be months before anything is noted. So, I don't know that they would fire him for that. But again, it's too early to speculate. We have so many more hours of shows where we can do that with more information. And don't worry, we will.
Don't worry. There may be more news coming on Ohio State's front in the next few days and weeks in terms of recruiting and transfer portal and coaching staff changes. There may be some news coming on the Michigan front in terms of, I don't know, hypothetically, some coaching staff changes that could be coming there. That would be a great reason for, number one, go ahead and hit the thumbs up right now. I'll wait. Go ahead. Thank you. 1, 2, 3, click. All right. We all did it. Thank you, friends. But also to be subscribed to our YouTube channel and hit the bell, because this will probably not be the last live show that we do with some breaking news. If we'd let, these are more fun when you guys are here to talk about stuff and ask us questions and give us stuff to talk about. So make sure you hit the bell, make sure you are subscribed, and also join us at BuckeyeHuddle.com, because as Tony said earlier, we were talking about Bill O'Brien as a leading candidate for this job 6 days ago now, more than 6 days ago now. It was last Saturday morning. I put that up with 2 names, and Bill O'Brien was one of them. So if you want to kind of have the inside scoop on Ohio State football, make sure you find us at BuckeyeHuddle.com. Tony and Kevin and I covering the team. Why am I wrapping the show, Tony? This is a Buckeye Weekly show. Now, Tony, tell the people, why am I wrapping the show up? This is not my job.
Tom gets paid by the word. That's all. And Kevin knows Tom likes to talk. This is Kevin's burner account, David Greenshield, saying Kevin is the brains of this operation.
That's the meanest thing anyone's ever said.
Before we say something that we shouldn't and insult anybody other than Kevin, I don't want to do that. David, don't ever do that again. All right. Don't ever insult me, insult my family. You can insult Tom. I don't care. But when you imply that Kevin has any brains in any operation, you're coming after me and my family, and I won't have it. So let's just go. We'll call it a day. Thank you all for tuning in. As Tom said, find us at BuckeyeHuddle.com. Find Kevin there too, the brains of the operation.
Wow, all these flavors, and you chose to be salty. I don't know.
Brains are also in jars full of formaldehyde, and sometimes those brains are also in operations. Anyway, let's go ahead and call it a day. Thank you for joining us on the snowy Friday, wherever you are, and we'll talk to you guys later.